Futurizing democracy means also to look at what are the South American experiences tell us in terms of democratic participation, and also what's the actually futurized concept of democracy as it is lived, practiced, thought for, and also striven for in a country like Brazil. And I'm very happy to say hello to Rodrigo Assumpção, who is the CEO of DataPref, working for the Brazilian government and making sure that all social security data, all education data, even some health data are processed nicely, not just by mainframes, but also by AI. Rodrigo.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here and presenting some ideas. I'm wise enough not to brag about my numbers in India. We usually do that elsewhere, but never in India nor in China. But in other places, they're impressive. This is the company. It's a fully state-owned company. We process basically all of Brazilian social data, labor data, social security data, social assistance data, and now education data as well. So, but the ideas I brought were on these elements, that the digitalization of everyday life, together with social networks, have opportunities and threats, which is obvious. But some of the divisions are being stated as the opposition between, or the choices that we have to make between technosocialism and technofeudalism. People were talking about this yesterday, like Dorothy. So if you're not called Musk, Zuckerberg, or Gates, or something like that, and if you're not interested in becoming part of a butler class, perhaps going towards technosocialism, fighting for technology for inclusion might be a good idea. But then we have to face that between feudalism and socialism, you have something called capitalism in terms of historical evolution, which seems to be central to all these discussions that we're having. And we'll get back to that. I love the phrase electoral autocratic regimes. It's the threat that most of us are facing. But now we're also having a huge conflict between corporations, mostly captained by big tech, and nation states. When you have individuals whose net worth is larger than states, and they decide that they can individually intervene in a conflict such was mentioned by the Ukrainian war, where an individual interfered and decided how communications were going to happen, then we have something new on the planet. We have something that we haven't seen before, and we're going to need to position ourselves, because democracy, as we understand it, is mostly centered around nation states. There are no democratic concepts in corporations. And we have to understand that people are avoiding these concepts also for a reason. And many of these elements of disturbance, fake news, weaponization of media are happening for money because of capitalism, but also to undermine the concept of nation state. The democratic challenges concerning legislation, you have the ambition to legislate technological advancements. Unfortunately, that has never succeeded. Technology walks much faster, runs much faster than the legislative process. And we've got to be aware of that, because tech-focused legislation, in some cases, and I saw some very good cases here being presented, but some of the bad elements or the bad results are already covered by regular laws. Monopolies, slander, defamation, falsehood, theft, even murder, if you go further. So these things we already have, and we can already face many of the challenges, because pursuing technologically specific legislation sometimes, in some places and in some cases, is also a hoax. Lawfare and fact-checking. We've discovered in Brazil, we're also a very polarized society, that many of the campaigns boil down to something like 200 individuals that captain chains of command of spreading misinformation, for us mostly on WhatsApp. If you get down to 200 individuals that are purposefully doing this to keep on making money, to keep on polarizing, to dispute power, then you can also get back at them. You can use lawfare to go after them and wreck their lives with pursuit of suits in the law courts and get them out of this public sphere. The meltdown of truth, however, we have to understand, is something that we're not going to go back. The word, the written word, the published word, no longer has authority. And now we're seeing the meltdown of the authority of the image. Until very recently, a photograph was considered true by default. An image or a movie was considered truth by default. That is no longer happening. But society has to learn to understand this as we understand that somebody's opinion or written text is just that. We're going to have to evolve to understand that the image also is no longer the reflection of truth. And as Peter mentioned, we need to accept that we already have tools to face many of these corporations. We need to tax the hell out of them. At least it will bring us back some possibility to do some good while all these things adjust in this new society. So, and this is a mistake. It's not a new word, econology. It's just the T that's missing. Dorothy was talking about technological dependence yesterday. It's not something we're going to overcome just by appealing to our consciousness. There's only one country in the world that managed to get rid of Microsoft in the government, and even that country still has 50% using and they did it because of war. They did not do it because of consciousness. The only country is Russia. So they were forced to do it. But what I mean to hear is that it's incredibly difficult. We tried a couple of times already in Brazil, and it's not easy. It's easy when you're talking main industrial IT, when you're talking about specialized people. But when you're talking about broad uses of convenience applications like office applications, then you're facing an uphill battle that we need to face with incredibly potent and broad support. And then we come down to individualism versus citizen participation. The atomization of society and the decline.
One more minute.
Sure. And collectivity. The social networks that point towards a hyper-individualism versus collective organism. People believe that they are individuals and that supersedes the community. It's very difficult to fight and struggle when that happens. You have the echo chamber that you were talking about, and the millions that were silent while some few managed to scream very loud. And of course, government digital transformation has to choose whether it's going to treat citizens as citizens or citizens as consumers. If we treat citizens as consumers, then the middle class defines that it wants more government and government that serves themselves and not allow it for distribution for the poor. So citizens have to stay citizens and consumers are out of the picture in the relationship between government and citizenry. And of course, to end, we have to empower and resignify democracy. There are many participatory tools for budgeting and constant and micro decision-making, significant decision-making, because democracy was being eroded much before technology, much before AI, because we are not allowed to talk about economy. The most important elements of our lives, the things that affect us most, are to be seen as natural, scientific, deterministic, and not something that should be debated publicly. while we accept that, democracy will be corroded, and technology is just the tool that is doing the eroding now. We have to recover the belief that politics can generate effective transformations. The Brazilian, and this is the last slide, the Brazilian collaboration for this, our version of DPI, which we have been doing for a couple of decades now, is to consolidate the national data infrastructure. This, if you don't have AI, or if you're starting AI, you're not sure where AI go, every country needs to face this challenge. Setting up the national data infrastructure, as important as roads, ports, airports, telecom, you need to get control of your data. Osama was mentioning this. This is the real struggle, because pretty soon something new is going to come along beyond AI, which will be called, I don't know, post-AI, whatever. But the data, whether we have it, whether we control it, whether we keep it, this, I believe, is what will determine our futures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo.